This afternoon, our keynote panel will be presenting on social media, and I'd like to invite the panel to come on up, and I'll be talking about it as they get comfortable. In terms of social media, we see it in nearly every aspect of our life. And I'm sure you've noticed that we've worked very hard to include it in this conference. Can anyone tell me our hashtag? She needed a microphone. But anyway, I have to tell you right up front, it was pound COC11. So thank you for shouting that out. So our panel of experts this afternoon will be discussing the power of the social web and how it is shaping the future of public health, government, healthcare, and education. To lead this discussion, I'm very pleased to introduce Mary Lou Fulton, Program Manager at the California Endowment. Mary Lou, I get to say something about you first. Has worked in the media industry for 20 years with leadership positions at the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, AOL, GeoCities, and other digital media companies. Mary Lou will be introducing the panel and, of course, pulling everything together and making it look simple for those of us who find it still challenging.
Thank you so much. It's really impressive to see so many people here in the last hour of the last day, so thank you for hanging in there. We'll do our best to make this worth your while. We are going to be taking questions from you all in person as well as on Twitter, so please go ahead and ask your questions and make your comments, and we'll do our best to incorporate that into our session today. I'm not going to make you stand up, but I was at a meeting convening earlier this week in Sacramento with a number of our youth leaders and organizers. And when they heard something they liked, when they heard something that made sense to them, they snapped. So I'm going to ask you to snap with me if you had a good time at this conference, if this is worth your while. And if you hear anything that you like that we say, we'd appreciate some snaps so we can know that we're on the right track. All right. I'm going to start by sharing just a few thoughts quickly so that we can move on to our great panel. To advance the slides, do I just hit enter or clicker? All right. So we're all on a social media journey, and some people are starting at a different place than others. Maybe some of you consider horse and buggy is the stage of the journey you're on. Any snaps for horse and buggy? Few? No? Okay. But there are others who are in a much faster pace, and I'm pleased that we have actually somebody who was at NASA here on our panel, so I get to use the space shuttle picture. But I wanted to make this point that the world that we're in with social media is changing every single day. I'm relatively new to foundations and health, and one thing I've observed is that it really is a culture of the expert. We're surrounded by PhDs and MPHs and MDs and people who really know their stuff. This is a world in which if you know your stuff today, you might not tomorrow. So we just ask that you go on this journey and you approach this world with really a sense of curiosity, a desire to learn, and I think a sense of wonder, because we are the first people ever in the history of this world to be able to communicate and connect with each other in this way. It's really astonishing when you think about it. And so I think rather than waiting for that perfect gold-plated evaluation strategy or the evidence base to be completed, we should just dive on in and get started. A lot of people say that the world has really gone social these days, and I say that it really always was. We as people, we're wired to be social, to communicate and connect, to want to be with other people, to express ourselves. And I think what's happened in recent years is that the availability of internet access, the speed of the internet, and lots of new tools and websites have allowed the internet to catch up with us. And so we're able to now do things digitally that we always did when we were together. And we reached a really important milestone last year that told us this, and that was the month in which Facebook surpassed Google as the website that had the most unique visitors in the US in a particular month. And so I think that, we need to be aware that the world has changed a lot in terms of how people get information. It's not like it used to be. Even in, a few years ago when we built a website and then we figured people would just use search engines to find us. Now that's not true. Now we see that it's the social media, the social ecosystem that is the deliverer of information. And because I used to be in the newspaper business and I'm the daughter of a newspaper carrier, I think of us now all like newspaper carriers. We're the ones who are carrying the news forth in the world to everyone we know through our organizations. And it's really our responsibility as advocates to do that, because if we're not visible in the social world, then we're invisible. And we can't afford to be invisible. We need to be visible, we need to be active, because it's through that visibility and that activity that we can advance all the changes that we're working toward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our great panel. And first up is Marty Kearns, who many of you may know from his work at PreventObesity.net. He's also an expert in sort of the dynamics of networks and helping us understand how connecting with one another in this digital world can help us work together more efficiently and effectively. So I'll turn it over to Marty.
Thank you. It's an honor to be the bitter end, and over the next 2 hours, we're going to take you through how to do tweeting. So I wanted to stop for a moment and really just throw all the technology aside. I think technology scares people when you start to think about internet strategy. And the first thing that we want to think about is why do you listen? Because the whole beauty of the web is it's this two-way medium. And most of us, as we organize, we start to think about what is the, how can I talk to everybody? And really what I want to shift that to is how can you listen? And how can you listen at scale to make your work better, to do your job more effectively? So we want to ask, who do you connect to? When you think about your job, who do you connect to that changes your work? How do you ask them for the information? How do you get them engaged in what you're doing so that you can learn from them and shift your work? In order to connect with someone, you have to ask for it. Most of our groups, most of our organizing doesn't really have an ask. We can think of how many presentations today or how many times we've gone through, and you read a great report, and where's the ask at the end? In order to build a movement, to engage people, to listen to them, to shift what you do, you have to start with that connection. You have to get them to do something, and you have to have an ask that's timely and reasonable and starts you down that path of engagement with the issue. So Prevent Obesity is one of those places. We started this with the idea of how do we get the ask. We all know that there's going to be a movement. The only way we're going to get this movement built is to ask. Join the movement. Get involved. Get engaged. We're also going to have to ask every time we want to do something, we want to do policy work, we're going to have to make the ask clear. So here, you can go to PreventObesity.net/marketing, and there's the ask for what we heard so much about the food marketing efforts. This is the opportunity to give your input to the FTC Commission. We hope that you engage on that. And we also have to ask on our websites in ways that are not just about the web. They're about email, they're about chat, they're about phone numbers. You have to go that extra mile to listen and to engage with your audience, because that's what they expect. Then the question becomes, okay, I get it, but how do we engage? And that's really, in a very quick summary, I want to talk about what are the tools that you can do to listen and to engage with your audience. First and foremost is your website, and you can look at traffic. You can look at, how are my visitors coming to my site? What are they doing? How are they bouncing out of my site? What are they interested in when they're here? Why do you want to do that? Because that's going to change what kind of content you put on your website. You want to look at what's happening with my page views. Where are people coming from? How's my conversion rate? If by luck one of these reporters refers to my group and I get 10,000 people to come, how many of them are actually going to join and stay engaged so that we can work together? And every month you should be getting together and looking at some simple things like Google Analytics, or a simple, what's our conversion rate? How many people came versus how many signed up? That's part of a listening strategy. You also have to look at, what did they do when they were there? When traffic came in from a certain audience, here we look at the Let's Move website, and it threw them to Prevent Obesity. What happened to them? What were they looking for when they were there? They were looking for finding organizations, joining movements. After they took an action, where'd they go from our thank you page? So you really look at this, and we pull these together every month in Prevent Obesity so that we can do these kind of campaigns and get smarter with each iteration. We also stop and we look at every email that we send out and try and figure out, just like this, you grab a screenshot of it and you have someone in your staff say, what's our open and click-through rate on each one of these? And you let the whole staff look at it and you have a conversation about what are people interested in our emails. And you look at it over time and you start to see, wow, they're interested in profiles of each other. They're interested in getting the backstory about the other leaders in the movement. And that tells you, well, should we do more of that? Well, that's what your audience wants. You can also start to scale up from there and start to think about, how do I listen to what's going on out there in the blogosphere? There are lots of different blogs focused on lots of different issues. There are tools out there that you can listen to. This is 7,000 blogs that we look at every day. We scrape them and try and figure out who's talking about childhood obesity, who's linking to the big government sites that are related to childhood obesity, who's talking about our issue. And we can start to see where are we getting resonance, where are issues talking about, surprising the environmentists or the religious groups that are talking about, the religious bloggers that are talking about childhood obesity. We can also extend beyond that, and this is actually works, so if you have your cell phone, feel free to pull it out and see how one of these works. You can always hit stop at the end of it if you haven't done one of these though, but send Prevent Obesity Network, PON, to that number, 30644. If you haven't done those before, there's a nice way to experiment. So we can look at how are we retaining people? And then you think, how do we get to people who are not on our site, who haven't come to us yet? And there you can use tools like Google Insight, where you can go and start to say, okay, how are people searching for the term? This is not a good trend for most of the way that we frame our issue. We talk about obesity. Well, you know what? People are stopped searching for obesity. It's going down. So you can start to see, how does that affect us? If that affects us and we only talk about obesity, we don't talk about health and health metrics and diet and other things that people are interested in, how are they going to find our websites if it's all filled with the word obesity that less and less people are searching for? So by listening to what the audience is looking for, you start to know, what should I be talking about to bring them in and connect with me? And then finally, once you listen and you connect and you start to figure this out, it's a question, why am I doing that? Why? Because it matters. This was our first website up at the top. We talked about the map. Come join the map. They were looking at the data and the conversion rate was really low. We said, we've got to improve that. The second one has a 10% higher response rate. That means for every bit of audience that comes, we get 10% more people just because we changed the graphic on the front page. You only get that because you listen to your audience and you look at that data. It's a small change. It's a change of an icon or a graphic. You watch how people engage. This is a marketing campaign. You make it easy for them. One click. They give you their comments. They can edit and say they can learn about your issue, and then they can submit it and get engaged in the network. We launched this campaign yesterday in support of the Food Marketing Work Group, and one day we got 3,800 comments submitted to the FTC as part of that. So you listen, you engage, and you start down this path of, by listening, getting people involved in the effort. So I just thought, as a keynote, our basic job is to in a short amount of time, to kind of give you that push, to say, to inspire you to do something else. There's no way we could explain all these tools, but when we have to tell a narrative about how and why people should go home and actually say, how do I start down that path? So hopefully by putting this story together, we can try and get you going down that path with us. Thanks.